Lulu Mazzei, known to many as Lulu, is a licensed clinical social worker, a certified psychedelic assisted therapist, and a practitioner of Tantra and sacred sexuality, who 3 years ago left her life in the US for the Sacred Valley of Peru. In that time, she moved from a city-based solo polyamorous sex therapist to married monogamous and living in what she describes as spirit-centered sexuality. She joins us today to explore what transformation actually felt like from the inside. So Lulu and I have already been talking. I've already had a really enjoyable conversation. I just had to remember to hit record. So thank you for your generosity of spirit so far. And I'm really looking forward to this. So I did want to start, if it's okay, I'll just take you back a little bit just to get a feel for what life was like when you were growing up, what your formative years were like, and maybe would the person you were in your teens, early adulthood, would they recognize who you are today?
That's a beautiful question. And the first thing that comes to mind is actually I had a girlfriend come visit me just the other day ago, and she's known me since I was 21, and I'm now 38. And, I asked her, obviously with my new diagnosis, I'm really kind of looking at my whole life, if you will. And I asked her, what is kind of like the thread that's always been me, right? Amidst all of the different identities and paths that I've walked, what really feels like me? And on one hand, she said, oh, well, you've always kind of been a little intense. So that's one piece. But more importantly, she said, you've always been a connector. And growing up, from a very early age through my formative years, as you say, and beyond, that really rings true for me. I can remember being in third grade, and there was a new girl who showed up to school. And, showing up to school in third grade in the middle of the year is always challenging. And I just felt, this empathy for her and kind of, invited her in and, come meet these girls and let's play together. And we remained, great friends for many, many years. And that speaks to, my desire and ability to always kind of bring people together. And along with that is, at times almost like too much empathy. And it makes me a really great therapist, a really great guide, a really great facilitator, because I can feel and sense sometimes before others can, their emotions or distress or what they need. It's also the gift of being a human design projector. I've always been able to see into people really deeply. And so, there are certain things that have definitely remained with me. And that piece of being a connector, I've received this feedback just in the last few weeks, is once I found out that I had cancer, I said, okay, I'm going to need support beyond my husband, beyond my family. And I created a WhatsApp group full of women who I have met and loved from around the world. And now there's about 27, 28 women in there. And I'm getting the feedback that, wow, like this is so amazing to be in this group and to see how you have cultivated this gathering and this support from incredible women, goddesses from around the world. And so even in, probably one of the darkest nights of my life, I'm bringing people together to connect. And that feels like me.
Do you think there's something more powerful about that group being only women?
Yeah, sweet that you picked up on that. Part of my dharma, my path, has always been to support women. Not that I do not support men, but there's something so potent and powerful for me about being a woman. And I've sat with many male clients, but I don't have that lived experience. And part of the beauty and the gift of the feminine is this ability to be in ritual and to be in circle. I mean, that's what happened, in ancient times and in ancient wisdom when there was a lot of goddess worship, and the feminine was really exalted, and there's so much power in that. And so for me, it wasn't about like, it's never been about excluding men. It's always been about supporting women on a path of aliveness and a path of authenticity so that, yeah, our gifts can really come together. Because when a group of women come together in support and in creativity, I've seen the magic that can happen. Um, and, I want to talk about girl stuff, because part of the path that I'm going on now is I had to explore fertility preservation and, make decisions about, my womb. And my womb is, through the path of spiritual awakening, has become one of the most important things to me, is to protect this space and to protect this energy. And obviously women understand and feel that. So yeah, it was important to me to be held by a group of powerful women.
Mm. It's really interesting as you're saying that. I'm sort of thinking back, sort of historically, how, and the way I express it is probably wrong, but how much fear strong women or groups of women has generated in men. I think back in the UK, we had witch trials. In the US, you had witch trials. We had so many things. They weren't witches. These were healers and goddesses. They were spiritual individuals. They were incredible healers and incredibly empathic. And a lot of things you're saying now, 300 years ago would have been like witchcraft, burn her at the stake, and that sort of thing. And I wonder why. Why we as men have feared that so much. Because there's so much, hopefully we're learning now, there's so much in the power of womanhood, the power of priestess, the power of accepting who we are, all those things. There's so much power, empathy, and love in those things. But I don't know why we feared that as men. And that's a massive question. I don't know whether you have any feelings about that.
I was reaching out to a former mentor recently, and I was looking at her bio, and one of the things that she put on there was professional witch. And I thought, oh, that's so great.
I like that.
I would call myself a mystic, and sure, I'm a witch, but in modern days, maybe we don't use that language. And I don't know if I have, if I can speak for men around the fear of that power. But the thing that, comes up for me is that a lot of the magic and potency of the feminine that can rest in men or women, but that women are women in, Western and modern days can tap into, is more unseen. And so it's not coming from the mind. We can't explain it. You can't put your finger on it. I mean, one of the things I do with women is take them through a womb awakening journey. And a lot of that includes, astral travel or embodiment practices or just reconnecting to the womb. And when I say the womb, I mean the entire reproductive system. So, we're doing modern day magic, if you will. And there is such great power in that when women can reclaim, when anyone can reclaim that, there is this spark of the divine that lives within me, and I have this power. And so, I think maybe that fear can come from the lack of knowing or the lack of embodied experience of that magic. And my own husband, bless him, he understands like the power of women. He understands and reveres women because, we are the ones. Let's think about it, right? That yes, it takes two people to create life, but we are the ones that are carrying this. We are the ones bringing life into this world. So it makes sense to me on so many different levels to trust the intuition and the spirit and just this great mystery that is a woman. Because even if you're not birthing a child, we can all birth magic and creations into the world. And yeah, my husband understands this. And so it's beautiful to be with a man who not only, walks the path of the feminine, but supports women and supports me as the queen and the goddess that I am. He's not afraid of women. He's more interested in learning from us. And maybe that's where some men, have fallen short or have fallen into the trap of fear of, just because you can't understand us doesn't mean there's not, that there's not a place for us in all aspects of life.
What was there a sort of almost a natural break that you had? So you had a life before that was very much about making things happen, about building things, about leading, about pursuing, about, I guess, following the American dream, about making things happen. Was there a natural point where you decided this isn't the path I'm meant to be on, and I'm going to change and become something very different? What did it feel like at that time?
Yeah, if I take myself back to living in Long Beach, and that was now, what is it, 2026? So I've been on this journey for about 3 years now. And in 2022, I was a successful sex therapist. I had helped build a practice in LA called Modern Intimacy. And I had a thriving burlesque career. And I had, created, with the support of all of these women, a burlesque school, and a troupe called the Siren Sisters. And everything seemed to be, flourishing. There was like all this aliveness and creative energy, just like spewing out of me. But something started to speak to me, and I started to have this desire for more sacredness in my life, for more of that mystical magic. And I had read my first Tantra book, and that kind of opened my door to, yeah, there are people who are exploring this, and there's a whole different path. And I had always loved visiting San Francisco, but I had this, belief like, well, I can never live there. Like, I can't leave my life and just like, do that. And honestly, through taking psychedelics and re-entering the rave world, my heart started to open in a new way. I started to see the signs and synchronicities of life, and I started to feel like more things were possible, like there was more waiting for me. And at the culmination of probably the greatest production, the greatest burlesque show that I and the troupe had put on, I remember getting home that night after finally unloading my car and taking a shower and laying in bed. And it was 2 a.m. in the morning. And after such a peak experience, you would imagine that you would feel so fulfilled and so just alive and grateful. And I just felt empty. I felt empty and I felt alone. And in that moment, I started to make decisions towards a change, towards something else. And only a couple months later, I decided that in 2023, I was going to move to San Francisco, because I realized that if I stayed where I was in that life, in that role, in that job, in all of it, that I wouldn't evolve. And one of my greatest fears has always been stagnation. I love movement. It's like the water. Water is so important to me because it's just always flowing. Like there are waves, things are crashing, but it's always moving. It's always moving. So yeah, I was just absolutely ready at that time in my life to say, okay, what's next?
Did did you have so you said you knew you were ready, but did you know what you were ready for at that point?
I don't think that consciously, like, I knew what I was ready for, because, if you ask me, like, now, like, if I knew back then everything I would have gone through in the last 3 years, I would have been like, "Ooh, I don't know about that." Because really, it's been, a cycle of spiraling, and a cycle of death and rebirth. Um, it's not as if, yeah, everything has been easy and just, easeful and joyful. There's been a lot of pain, a lot of chaos, a lot of hardship amidst the beauty. And so I don't think I consciously knew what I was ready for. But again, that intense part of me, I've kind of always been that person that's like, okay, let's jump off the cliff and see what happens. I'm trying to do less of that these days. But I was just ready for I was ready for more. I was ready for more. I was ready to expand. And I think that's where, the psychedelics really supported me in the expansion.
And it wasn't necessarily just one cliff. It was almost like you jumped off a cliff, swam a little bit, climbed another cliff, jumped another. So you went from solo and polyamorous to married and monogamous, from a city to rural Peru, all in a relatively short space of time. Which of those maybe surprised you the most, or were perhaps the most disorienting to who you thought you were?
Yeah. Being in Peru, definitely. I loved being in San Francisco. Like, I loved the city. I loved the aliveness. I found a community that was kind of like, oh, there are other people like me, in a sense. Um, and moving to Peru was like a huge, huge culture shock. Um, I've always grown up in like larger, dense cities, and now I was living, in this 13 home community in a valley in a foreign country. There were none of my normal, how do I say, like, points of ease or comfort. And so it started to become harder to like find myself, to find my center. And so, yeah, I was often sitting with the question of like, well, who am I here? If all the things that make me me or make me comfortable are not here, yeah, who am I, or who will I become? And is very challenging. There are moments my husband will reflect to me that I'd be laying in bed and going, I love my life. And then, 2 weeks later, as I move into the luteal phase of my cycle, it was just spiraling into the darkness. And why am I here? Like, what am I even doing with my life? And how did I get here? Like, this isn't me. And so, you were talking about antidepressants earlier, just kind of like stabilizing those emotions. The last 3 years, I think what has surprised me the most is the amount of instability, excuse me, in my in my being, in terms of I've gone from experiencing terror to, on the other side of terror is bliss. And if I'm looking right at like a continuum, some people might experience, I know people can't see us on here, so let me try and describe that. But like a pendulum, right? Somebody's pendulum in life might be just kind of swinging very gently back and forth at the bottom. My pendulum over the last 3 years has swung all the way up and all the way, almost like a giant circle, like all the way up and all the way to the other side. I've experienced it all. And that, yeah, I mean, you ask about being surprised, like that's what felt so surprising, is that I have all of this capacity to feel and to experience life in a way that, yeah, I really didn't know existed or was possible. And that's part of, for me, like the tantric path, is experiencing all of it, being embodied and present in all of it, and not labeling it as, well, this is good or this is bad, or this is right or this is wrong, this is yin, this is yang. It just is. It's all part of life.
It is. It's really interesting hearing you describe it like that, and because I think a lot of things, certainly in the industrialized age, whether it be societally, from a media perspective, politically, it sort of feels that we've been sort of guided towards accepting that we have this little movement and we can go a little bit this way, a little bit that way. But what do you mean you want to go over there? What do you mean you want to go over there? And it feels like almost it takes quite a lot to break out of that because it suits, it suits governments, it suits corporate bodies, it suits whatever, it suits people if the populace is fairly static and fairly stable. It doesn't want a very volatile populace that goes one thing to the other and backwards and forward. It wants us all to stay in this middle bit, really, and it does. What do you think it was that gave you the strength to? And I think you expressed it very eloquently. Not about deciding what was good or what was bad, what was wrong and what was right, just recognizing that partaking in the experience itself was something that was going to add some positive layers to your story. What was it that gave you the strength to do that, do you think?
Well, I guess that it's funny that this is what's happening, but I'm going to put that back onto you for a moment. And you had shared, 30 years you had been on antidepressants. That was part of your story. So I'm curious, before I share mine, like what was it in you that gave you the strength or the courage to say, actually, I'm gonna try something different and see what life is like.
Yeah, I think it was very much almost like you're saying, maybe not as extreme, but just the recognition and awareness that it must be something else. This and I had to say, I cannot believe being on the same thing or the variations of it for 30 years. It's as effective as it was 30 years ago. My body must have got used to it. I'm actually better off with them, without them, etc., etc. I mean, I must admit, for anybody that's thinking of coming off antidepressants, I would highly recommend getting medical help. Coming off antidepressants is horrible. It really is painful, physically, mentally, emotionally. So it takes. It's like if you're going on a diet, you can't expect to sort of suddenly day one, right? Hey, I've lost 20 kilos. It doesn't work that way. It took me 6 months to get off them properly. And I tried a couple of times before, and I've always gone back to them after very, very dark episodes. And after that 6 months, okay, I can kind of do that. But just the recognition that there are things outside of this sort of boundary that the antidepressants created. So yes, they numb things and they make life tolerable. But as I got older, I sort of thought, who wants to live a tolerable life?
Yeah.
I'd rather have incredible periods of intolerance, incredible periods of excitement and amazement and sadness and woe and distress and pleasure. And I didn't have any of those feelings. I just had this just numb feeling. That's why I just thought, a little bit like you described far better than me, but it almost that there must be some extremes out here that I'm meant to experience. And before it gets too late, I think it's time to experience them.
Beautiful. And I love that. And that's, what gave me the strength is the desire for more. whether, I couldn't foresee what that more meant, but there was something inside of me, something inside my heart that said, there's more and I am meant for more. It makes me think of Disney Princess Belle. She's singing on the top of that mountain, there must be more than this provincial life. And, I've always loved the princess stories, and I believe in fairy tales because I don't believe that, there's this like perfect world, but that a fairy tale, it comes from myths, and myths
Yeah.
come from, I believe, right, like real experiences. And I really have lived a fairy tale these last few years. And that doesn't mean that it was perfect. Like, look at a real fairy tale. There's dragons and beasts and, witches and all of this stuff. And yeah, I have fought, I have surrendered, and I have walked through fire, right? Like Kali has burned my life down many times. But I'd rather live in a fairy tale and experience great pain and great pleasure than just feeling kind of that numbness, right? When I was still living in Long Beach, it was part of my ritual, like once a week, to go to the bar by my house, have 2 beers, and eat a grilled cheese sandwich. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but there was a part of me still that was numbing from my life, even though it appeared so great, and it was so great. And I wanted to, yeah, like move away from that. And I think the strength is just like eternal, and internal. And I started learning more about my ancestry. And so, calling upon the Druids and the Kali and, just yogic deities, and working with those and developing mantras and sitting in stillness and dancing. And it's like all the things that make me give me strength, because yeah, they help me not like cope with life. I don't think, yeah, we all have coping skills, but they allowed me to be present with life. And that's the difference, right? You coming off of antidepressants, or somebody kind of giving up poor coping skills or whatnot, is like, do you have the strength and willingness to be present with life, all of it? And yeah, I can say now that I have that presence, and I continue to have that willingness. My life is about to change again, and I think after a few years, I'm ready for more of that stability. I'm ready for the waves in my life to be a little bit smaller, to have a little less stress on my nervous system, to feel more comfort and more ease. I wouldn't take anything away that I've experienced, but obviously healing cancer is a whole new journey, right? I don't want the pendulum to be swinging so far. I want to feel more peace.
I've been fortunate to talk to a lot of people that practice ethical non-monogamy, polygamy, etc. And I think you're the first person that I've encountered that's gone from a polyamorous approach to life to monogamy. Normally it's the other way around. First of all, your husband must have been an amazing guy, amazing lucky guy, but amazing guy. What was it that made you to feel, no, I am ready, and not only ready, I want one person, and I want that direct one-on-one relationship, and I want to jettison what I had in the past. What was it that brought that to mind?
I think there's part of me that claimed I was solely polyamorous, because I couldn't actually find anyone. I didn't even have a partner or partners. It was a protective mechanism in some senses.
Yeah.
And then I moved to San Francisco where everybody and their mother was polyamorous. And so I was like, oh, okay.
Oh God, I'm not different anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I realized was, oh, like there's something in me that doesn't feel nourishing to me. Like I remember my first boyfriend in, 7 years. He was poly, and I said, okay, like we can try that. And um, we were getting kind of closer, and we had gone to this beautiful tantric puja, where we like stayed together the whole time. Normally in a puja, you kind of like rotate around and connect with different people. And we had stayed, like that was my request. I want to just experience this intimacy with you. And the week prior, we had gone to, just like a party with all these friends, and he had connected with another woman, and I knew her, and she was actually facilitating this event. So I was like, I know her, I trust her, she's a tantric goddess, like bow down. And as we were leaving, I look over back in the room, and they're making out. And my heart like shattered. And I felt like this raging fire inside me because it just felt so inappropriate, so unempathetic to me, standing, 30 feet away from both parties. And I don't know if it was that moment or just like a series of moments unfolding after being in San Francisco that I said, that's not for my heart. Maybe one day, maybe in a different situation. But when I met my husband, he was seeing another woman when we first started dating. And then I had to express, if we want to explore the path of us, then for me, I need there to be no other distractions for us to truly see. Otherwise, it's kind of, like, oh, well, this could still happen over here, or this person might be over here, and da 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 da. And it was about having depth with one person, with one story, with one soul. And that's, I think, really what my heart has always wanted, is to have that presence and devotion. And not that you can't have devotion in polyamory, but I think it makes it's different. And I wanted to experience devotion because I had that gift to offer, and I wanted that gift in return. And, I think once you have like a very stable foundation and trust, I think it's more possible maybe to open to other explorations. But for me, it's what felt really true in my heart. Instead of just having like the theoretical understanding and claiming to be one thing, I now have the like embodied experience of both, and one feels more authentic to my being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, something you mentioned before was, and I want to come back to at the time, but I'll come back now. You talked about surrender, and I think a lot of people perhaps see surrender as coming from a place of weakness, and I wonder when you have, particularly for women who've had to strive and fight and challenge to build an independent life, to build a life full of achievement, to build a life full of success, what does genuine surrender feel like in that moment? Because it's not weakness, is it? It's something almost the opposite to weakness. What does surrender consciously feel like?
I'm laughing because I'm trying to feel like what I feel in this moment, where we're in the middle of recording this beautiful conversation, and outside, and I don't have noise canceling headphones in, and outside there's the garbage trucks coming to pick up the garbage, and there's all this clicking around and noise and distraction, and my embodied experience of surrender in this moment is just, oh, okay, that's happening. I can smile at it. I can let it continue. I don't have to change it. And for me, one of the things that I have been in deep practice with for the last 8 or 9 months is Tandava. And it's a non-linear movement practice where you are sitting and trying to experience both spirit and matter in one moment, meaning I'm embodied in myself and I'm feeling my human form, but I'm also tapping into the vastness of oneness and unity in my non-dual nature, that I am all of it. And so that practice has helped me basically create space and create freedom in life in moments that would otherwise make me want to change it. And I think, yeah, surrender, like you said beautifully, it's not about weakness. It's about acceptance and finding freedom in any moment. And that might be easier said than done. But like everything, I believe it's a practice. And sometimes, you can surrender because you're willing to kind of let go. And other times, for me, the universe has just kind of forced a surrender. Like moving to Peru and being in this kind of isolated valley. I was like, oh, I don't know, like, just this constant, like, resistance. And life was just like, hey, like, you're here. You got to do it. Just surrender. And eventually I was able to. But yeah, if I could put it in, a shorter kind of packaging, I'd say surrendering for me is about not resisting the flow of life, the spanda of life that moves through me, but instead allowing it. I'm curious now as you sit with that, like what it feels like for you, or what your definition of it would be.
I don't know if I have one. I mean, I'll have a stab at it, but I think it's a little bit like you. It's really interesting you were saying before about but two things. One, you somebody came to your school when you were in third grade, and they were joining in the middle of the year. Actually, I moved schools in the middle of fifth grade. Moved a few hundred miles, and there wasn't somebody as empathic as you were at school. It was a difficult time. And then I moved again at the end of, I suppose, end of year 9. So yeah, lots moving around, and it does. I think that some of that does sort of stick with you really. But the other thing was about water. So I'm a water sign, I'm Pisces, and I absolutely am my happiest in, on, or near water. And as you're saying about surrender, I just think, I mean, you was talking before about waves and small waves. Even when I look at there's a small river near us, and it trickles along incredibly slowly, incredibly gently, incredibly sort of smoothly, whatever. But I know if I drop a twig into that water and I look back 20 seconds later, it's hundreds of meters away. The flow of the river, no matter how gentle it is, and that's almost what surrender feels like in a way to me, is that if you can surrender to almost the very gentlest of sensations, they have a huge impact on us. But I think the power of water to cut through mountains, to cast through stones, to create, all these incredible, beautiful tumble stones you see at the bottom of a riverbed. But that's through thousands of years of millennia, just gently doing their thing, nothing in their way, just surrendering to the motion of it. And that's what I guess it feels like to me. It's a terrible description, but that's the sort of the feeling of it is that's one thing that really, and I haven't surrendered to the frustration that this brings me, but I think one of the challenges I see we have today is that we have such amazing technology that we can connect with people and we're other sides of the world. My in-laws live in Australia. I can FaceTime at the weekend and talk to them and see them and hear them and et cetera, et cetera. And in some ways, we're at a period of history where we've never been more able to connect with pretty much anybody anywhere in the world. But at the same time, it feels that we're more disconnected than ever before. There are a couple of examples. So I watched on TV a few months ago, and people was filming a Taylor Swift concert. And people had paid like $1,000 for their tickets. They'd flown around the world to go and see her. They were buying all the merchandise, obsessed. But they filmed the crowd at the concert, and all the crowd were watching the event through their device.
Yeah.
They were watching this amazing event through this sort of 3 or 4 inch screen. And another one was a year or so ago, they announced the new Pope Leo in the Vatican. And the same then, there were nuns standing in St. Peter's Square watching it through their phone. And it just almost feels that we must feel a need to protect ourselves through the barrier these devices give us, that we don't surrender to the moment. We're not, when we're eating our meals now, it's in front of the television, it's on our phone. We couldn't, and I love nectarines and peaches. And when I stand in the garden, we have a little garden, it's some trees, some grass, and you can hear the wind in the trees. If I stand in the garden eating a peach and really tasting it in the sunshine of today, it's almost an orgasmic experience.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can literally grab a peach from the fridge or the bowl, eat it in front of the TV, and what was that? Oh, it was a peach. I don't even know I've tasted it. So I think there is something in almost a fear of surrendering yourself to a moment, whether that be a Taylor Swift concert or eating a peach or whatever it might be. It just feels that somehow we feel the need to create these barriers or this protective surface that our smartphones, our distraction allows us. See, I told you it'd be a much longer answer than you wanted, but that just, as you were saying, it just irritates when I look around. I was in Sydney a few months ago in Australia, going out of the Harbour Bridge into Sydney, and it was an amazing place. And I was looking around, people on the bus were just on their phone. And I know they're probably done it 1,000 times, so why would they look out the window? But it just felt that, gosh, the answers to what we're looking for in life isn't going to be found in our smartphones, isn't going to be found with AI, isn't going to be found in technology. It's going to be found communing and connecting with other people. Anyway, end of my sermon.
Beautiful. Should I applaud?
No, gosh, no. You can walk out if you want to, but no, that's just, it just feels that, yeah.
Well, the
surrendering to a moment, it feels so joyous, whether that be intimate moment with a partner, and whether that be a moment playing with the kids, or whether that be reading an amazing book, whether that be talking to somebody wonderful like you, whether that be whatever. I'm not distracted. I'm not thinking about my phone or device. I'm loving our conversation. I really wish we were in the same room, but it just feels that, I do love the word surrender. Now you said it, it really, really, it encapsulates everything I've looked for, really. I think it is surrender to that experience.
Yeah. And as you're talking, the thread for me is slowness. That's part of the path that I've been on since moving to the Sacred Valley of Peru, because where I was, there are very few distractions, right? I was living in a 13 home community, but it's not as if everybody's out connecting and having parties and doing all this. It was kind of, me and my husband in our home, and there's a lot of stillness, and the apus, the mountains that are, holding us. These are ancient mountains carrying and holding all this ancient wisdom, and they're just there. And it can be very confronting. And every day the sun would set around 5:30. So no matter what time of year, it would be dark, pretty early. And it's not like there was a lot that we needed to do or that we had to do. And there's plenty of things happening in the town, but didn't always want to go to the town. So I was confronted with myself without any of the distractions of Western culture. And so, something as simple as we had a compost toilet, and so every 4 days I'm cleaning my own poop, and cleaning this bucket. And I surrendered to that experience, and we would just do that slowly. And part of living there was, a connection to the land and connection more to what life was like without all of this, without modern technology and everything. And there's the capability to go a lot slower. And in that slowness, without all the distractions, you can find a lot more peace. And for me, it feels like now I can carry that inside of me, and I was able to bring it back here to the States with me, because now I know part of my truth is, okay, I don't want to live there full time, right? And now, because of having cancer, I don't know when I'll be able to go back. But I'm able to carry that peace and that slowness with me into this life, that I don't have to get caught in the whirlwind of hustling and of, things need to happen very quickly, and everything's got to constantly be, I want it yesterday, or as Ronnie Chang would say, like Amazon now, like I want it right now. And living there really taught me to surrender to a slower pace of being and a slower pace of living. And when you're able to do that, yes, then you can stand outside and eat your nectarine and actually taste it and have more, what I would say, sensual pleasure. And I want as much, sensuality and pleasure in my life as possible, because for me, that's part of actually living the human experience. Like, yes, I have this soul and I'm a transcendent being, but I'm here having an earthly experience in this human vessel, in this human form. So can I go slow enough that I can actually experience it for what it is, rather than, just trying to move through it. Yeah.
That's one of the interesting conversations I've had with other sex therapists or somatic healers and people that work with the body as well as the mind, is that going back to when we're in puberty, even before that, we're very much, sex isn't something that's often talked about, and we very quickly come to almost a menu of what sex is. So sex is a bit of kissing, touch here, do this, do that, orgasm, done, finished. That's typically it. And I want to talk to people that just say they have very, very unfulfilling sex life, they don't have sex life as they want to. I think one of the issues is that how people define sex, really. If we could somehow replace the word sex with pleasure, it'd be, I think when you first started dating when we were younger, how amazing was kissing? How amazing was kissing and holding and stroking and touching? It was fabulous, wasn't it? Yeah. And then as we get older, the kisses are very much the kiss means that I want something to happen now, and I want sex, typically penis and vagina. That's what we typically in a heteronormative relationship think sex is, really. And that puts a lot of pressure on people as men get older. Our erections aren't the same as when we're 20. Yeah. As women get older, perimenopause, menopause, lots of things happen, and we perhaps have this notion that, well, if not having penetrative sex, then we're not being intimate, which is such a shame. I think because there's so much pleasure to be derived from looking at somebody, from talking to somebody, from massaging somebody, from stroking somebody, from whatever. And I think, if we could somehow get into our heads that pleasure is what's important, as opposed to a particular act that we defined sex as. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. I think you're really onto something in the sense that, part of my desire and hope with anybody that I work with is to have a more expansive definition of what sex is. And I've really started to kind of try and speak less about sex, right? Because yes, I like what you said, like people just have this automatic menu that goes down in their head. And let's expand it to talk more about sexuality. And when I think of sexuality, for me, that's about how do I express and connect with my own energy, my own aliveness, my own life force, and how do I share that with myself and with the world? And so if we're looking at, sexuality, it already broadens it. And the menu can change because it's, if people want to have a better sex life, right? And if you want to have a better sex life, that begins with you. It doesn't begin with having a better partner, a better lover, having more sex, having more toys, having more experiences. It begins with, do you or are you actually able to sit in front of the mirror naked and see yourself? Can you look into your own eyes and find beauty? Can you touch yourself and experience just the joy and the pleasure of your own skin? Can you taste your own genitals and find, your scent? And for me, it's all about starting. If you want to have a better sex life, start with yourself. Become your own best lover. Become your own muse. Because otherwise, for the rest of your life, you're going to be kind of in this energy of taking, like, oh, I want to get something from somebody else, rather than showing up to these experiences, kind of these whole divine beings. And then, like you were saying, I can sit in my husband's lap and stare into his eyes. And for me, I could label that as having sex. And it's, for me, it's not about like having something. It's about that experience of true intimate connection, seeing myself or another person for the divinity within them, rather than just their body and their genitals. It's like, wow, this person in front of me, or this person, me, in front of myself, I have a spark of life that exists within me, that exists within everything in this world. And if I can connect to that in myself, then I can connect to it in the tree. And so my sexuality becomes the connection to aliveness, through that thread of aliveness through life. And my sex life isn't just about having intercourse with my husband. It's about how I exchange energy with myself and with the world in an intimate way. And that is so much more than just having an orgasm. And that doesn't exclude orgasm, right? No. But that's what my guidebook is all about, is helping people embody what I call spirit-centered sexuality, where you recognize that, there's a spirit that lives in everything. And when you can, connect to that, and when you can feel that, just changes things.
It does, and I think energy is such a potent word to use, really, because I am totally in the same space that you are. That I think a lot of people have this mistake that there's nature and then there's us. Not thinking that but we're all everything's nature. And whether you're outside walking by a river, outside walking on the street, outside in your garden, inside in your house, in the sun to the window, for goodness sake, there is that shared energy that we have. But I do think so many people never developed a self-pleasure practice, and because they were, when we were little boys, our hands were sort of slapped away. That's dirty, and it became something we had to do very quick before somebody came into the room. Oh my God, if I get caught doing this, I'm going to go to hell, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's and I read a report from an institute, and I couldn't believe the stats, but something like a third of women have never looked at their vulva in a mirror. Whereas for men, it's there; you can't really avoid it. You can see it. And we take great pleasure in exploring it. But for women, there's that, and it's exactly as you said. If we don't know what gives us physical and emotional pleasure, we've our partner's a mind reader. They can just figure it out for us, but that again, that's a Hollywood media thing. You read this sort of stories about, oh, he completes me, she completes me, I feel whole now. almost that we're missing something without having this perfect partner in our lives. And you can have an incredibly energizing, erotic, emotionally fulfilling experience by yourself. There's nothing that isn't a lesser experience, that's a better experience. It's just an experience. And I think that whole almost surrendering to the energy that you have just feels like feels like the right thing to do, really. And I don't know why almost now more than at any other time since I've been around. I'm sort of mid-50s now, and I've been around through lots of different events in the world, and it just feels now more than any other time. It's a time when we need to be in tune with our own energy.
Yeah.
We need to be able to understand our own sense of spirituality. And I divorce spirituality from religion purposefully. And I think spirituality is a very different thing. And it is, again, it's surrendering to the thought or the belief that this energy that connects us all is the most powerful presence that we have, really. So if you're able to bathe in that energy, if you're able to luxuriate in surrendering to it, it feels like it almost feels that that's all there is, which is the biggest thing there possibly can be. But that's what life is, really.
Yeah.
I know you didn't ask me a question, but I just babbled on there.
No, I love it. I mean, because you're reminding me, my guidebook, it's called Spirit Sex. And one of the invitations is about turning sensual energy into sexual energy. And, take yourself back, right? Of course, when you're in a new relationship, whatever the person does, if they lick your eyebrow, you're like, oh, like because of the hormone, the hormonal alchemization that's happening. But we all know that, okay, eventually that fades. And so I think people get to that place and they're like, what happened? I don't have the same desire that I had before. Now it feels kind of mechanical, or it's just not there. Like it's just gone. And so for me, one of the practices is, tapping into your senses, because if you can, I don't know, be with your partner and, feed each other a blueberry, one at a time, slowly, while looking into each other's eyes, while, feeling the taste of this fruit in your mouth, and, watching the other person, hearing the sounds that they are making, the pleasure that is there, and being in that sensuality together, I believe that can then open the door into sexual energy. And I really view, sexuality, like I was saying, as finding and locating within yourself and then within the world what turns you on. Because what turns you on is what makes you feel alive. That's why we're so obsessed with sex, because it makes us feel so good and so alive. So sexuality is about finding that turn on, that thing that makes you feel alive, whether it be, for me right now, it's being on podcasts, right? This turns me on, not turns me on in a sense of I'm experiencing, physical arousal. I'm experiencing arousal of my soul, of my heart, of my whole being. And from that place, then I can create. And so if sexuality is finding this thread of aliveness, then for me, spirituality becomes, how do I then take that thread of aliveness and put it into the world and put it into myself from a place and an energy of love? And that feels so important to me, because the two are inextricably linked. I can't have aliveness and spirituality as these two separate things. It's like the idea that pleasure and God don't mix, and whatever, you believe God to be, they're weaving together, right? Aliveness with love. And what is spirituality if not connecting to the ultimate truth that the reality is it's all love?
It is.
Thank God.
I do, but I don't want to take your whole day. So I just if I can ask you 2 more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So one question I normally ask at the end of, and I will ask it when I ask at the end of the episodes is, so what does the future hold? What's next for you? What's your vision for the future? Obviously, you're in a different place to many guests. You had the news that you got stage 4 colon cancer, and not sure what that holds for the future. But do you have a feel for what the future looks like for you?
The only kind of dream that I am holding on to in this moment is I'm 38. I'm about to turn 39 in September. But that for my 40th birthday, I want to visit Ireland. I want to visit the home of my ancestors. I want to walk gently on that earth. Just stand in awe at the cliffs of Moher, or wherever it brings me. And for now, that dream feels like enough. Because, yeah, part of the sadness and grief of this new reality is that, yeah, very quickly I'm having to be very honest and let go of, yeah, other dreams. You know, the life that my husband and I were living, we wanted to have a family. And, you know, we had plans to be in Peru for several years and then make our way back to the US. And, you know, those things are burning down. And so in this place, like, I'm holding on to the dream of, yeah, being in the land of my ancestors, and just trying to stay present for each moment right now, and follow that tiny thread of aliveness. You know, whether it be, oh, I bought myself a new bed, you know, like that felt really alive for me. Or continuing to do podcasts and to share my story. But whether or not I'm meant to walk this earth for, you know, 10 more years or 2, I want to feel alive while doing it. So just deeply listening and being present, and, yeah, getting to the land of my ancestors. So for now, that's enough. Just trusting that life is conspiring for me, and it will show me. I just have to keep on the path of flowing.
Yeah. And so somebody wiser than me, nearly everybody, and I'll paraphrase it terribly, but I don't think it's how long we walk on earth. I think it's the depth of the footsteps we leave behind. And I think, yeah, you have already created some very deep footsteps. And I'm sure that there are many, many more to come. So our island is beautiful. When you make it there, let me know. I'll very happily fly out to meet you for a cup of coffee. And it's a beautiful, it's a very special place, actually. It is a very spiritual, noble, green, luscious. Yeah, it rains a lot, but it does have so much of, so much folklore, so much magic, so much energy.
Yeah,
comes out of Ireland. So just thank you so much for your time. You could be doing so many other things with your time right now, but I really, really appreciate you bringing yourself to people. I'm sure people will listen, and hopefully they will send you their energy and their positivity. And and I look forward to, now you're in my life. I feel you're here for a purpose. So I look forward to you being in my life for many, many years to come. But no, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. It's just a delight to be here. And should I share how people can connect to me if they want?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll put lots of links into the notes and things, but please, absolutely.
Yeah. If anybody feels a resonance or a desire to reach out or know more, they can go to my website at alternativelove.com. They can sign up for my Substack there. And when you sign up for my Substack, I send for free the the first excerpt from my guidebook, Spirit Sex, and it's the first invitation is treating your body like a temple. And yeah, if anybody is touched or moved by my story, you know, the thing I'm sharing with people right now is if you want to support my journey, you know, sign up for my Substack, become a subscriber. It's $6 a month, but those slender funds will be going to alternative therapies that insurance doesn't cover, like, you know, being able to go to the spa or get a massage or red light therapy, things that are more holistic and that I know that I'll need. So any support is great.
And it's a beautiful website, and I read the Spirit Sex Guide, the initial part, and I thought, I love the notion of why wouldn't we treat our bodies like a temple? Why wouldn't we be concerned about what goes into them, how we use them, how we feel in them, all those things? It just was very it made a lot of sense. So it wasn't sort of, when I first opened up, I thought, gosh, how out is it? How out there is this going to be? It wasn't. It was just like, well, of course. I wasn't sure we should treat ourselves and treat everything else, and we are our bodies, for goodness sake. So
Yeah.
if we can allow ourselves to luxuriate and treat them with respect and honor them, then yeah, we're going to go a long way. But thank you so much again. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.